on a single surface. You don't have to create a printed circuit board with holes that go through for connection at the back. So to some extent it's a bit easier. And today you can get free software off Radio Spares. Oh, that shows my age. RS Components, free software that designs printed circuit boards. And if you can club together and pay the cost of maybe 10 or 20 boards printed off at the same time, you can get them by return of post from China in about a week or so at quite an affordable cost, particularly as a sort of club project. So don't discount doing what is called surface mount construction. But design is actually easier. It's computer-based these days. There's some brilliant free software about. The one I use is Symmetrix, and if you Google Symmetrix and ask for their circuit design software, you can download it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's great fun. Even if you haven't got time to build stuff, you can design it and satisfy yourself. You can show it's working. You can see how it works. And you can also almost say, well, I don't really need to physically build it now. I'm quite satisfied with it. But building it probably is what we want to do. If you're like making aerials, there's some excellent aerial software about this. EZNet is the one I use. You actually have to pay for that, but it is. There are various free versions with perhaps some limitations involved, and you can see how aerials work. So the design side is very much computer-based. I said I would come back to my comment about the component technology that was around in the 1920s, 30s. We don't really, well, we don't make components. Increasingly, components are all clumped together and you buy an integrated circuit with thousands of bits in it. We've moved on from component design really to systems design, where you've got working sub-assemblies or complete large functions which are then connected together. So I think amateur radio has by and large moved into system engineering. Now you can't really see the detail. Would anybody like to hazard a guess as to what this is? It's a remote station. You've got some sort of device here. This bit is actually the front, a removable front of this radio here. So the removable front, which has just got the tuning knob and the display and various function buttons, goes into some sort of combining box. It's got a loudspeaker there. It's got this says CW paddle, so that's the Morse key, and there's the microphone. There's the modem that then connects it to the internet. The modem that connects it to a split-out box, really, which takes a lot of the signals into the radio side. And there's various, that's the power amplifier, and you've got a rotator for an aerial. This is actually a block diagram of somebody's remotely controlled transmitting and receiving system that bounces signals off the moon. And when the Radio Society was celebrating its centenary year, we thought we would, we were invited by Ofcom to give their staff a talk on what amateur radio is today. We thought, well, shall we show them moon bounce, as the amateurs call it, bouncing signals off the moon remotely from Riverside House, Ofcom headquarters. So this bit of kit was in Ofcom's headquarters. We had to do a little bit of fiddling with their internet to take some of the firewall bits out. And this was over in Suffolk. And we bounced signals off the moon and demonstrated it live to Ofcom. That was an interesting example of where we are in the 21st century. The internet, the smartphone, is giving us all sorts of things. These are a couple of, well, this is a page off our Facebook presence. We've got our web presence here where we share news about the hobby and various things that are going on. And this is, for those of you who might recognise, well, who don't recognise it, this is a typical logging program. And the bit there is showing what we call the DX cluster. This is stations, amateur radio stations. Can't see the detail, but the call sign of the amateur radio station is down the left-hand side. There's a prefix indicator showing the country. There's a column showing the frequency, the radio frequency they're operating on, and then a few comments and those date and time. And it's colour-coded. You know, basically, red is a country that I haven't worked, so it comes up as red. So this is sort of running on my computer, so if I'm doing something else, and I see a red come up, I look at it and see, I'm never going to get that, it's Scarborough Reef and there's hundreds of thousands of people trying to get it. But maybe it's something a little bit easier and it's worth putting my transmitter on and having a go. So the internet, the smartphone is actually helping me. I can run the DX cluster on my phone and I can see coming up in the train today what I'm missing. That's frustrating. But it's also doing some of the work for us. I don't know whether many of you have come across CW Skimmer. This is an awesome bit of software written by a guy over in Canada, and it basically decodes multiple CW channels at the same time. So vertically across this display here, you can see the Morse code characters, and each of those are different transmissions. And the computer is decoding them down. You're getting the call signs and what they're doing. I was running this recently, and I had over 1,000 different sessions being decoded simultaneously. An amazing bit of software. So it enables, you can see it, perhaps can't read that, but if you were looking out for EA4KA, EA is Spain, if you were looking out for EA4KA, you could then tune to that particular thing and you found it. So it's helping you. This is perhaps a different bit of software, and this is typically a spectrum. So you've got radio frequency across the sort of horizontal axis, and the vertical axis shows the strength of the signal. So this gives you a visual indication of the radio bands that we're working on. Computers are also enabling us to develop more and efficient modes of communication. This is a picture that the ARRL, the American equivalent of Radio Society of Great Britain, the ARRL published back in 2003. The middle line, the datum line, is Morse, continuous wave, or CW. The probably original speech mode, amplitude modulation, is shown here relative to CW, and it's around about minus 27 dBs. A decibel, dB, is a logarithmic ratio. So that's sort of telling you that we're talking of amplitude modulation, which is typically the form of broadcast radio that today is only in this country really picked up on some of the shortwave bands and Radio 4 on the long wave. Possibly if you're a King cricket follower, you might be listening to the cricket on long wave, and that would be amplitude modulated. Many of you are probably familiar with FM radio. FM is more efficient because it's only minus 14 dBs relative to CW. SSB, which amateurs use a lot, it's only transmitting one side of, if you like, one side of the modulation relative to amplitude modulation, and it's more efficient. But look at some of these new modes. This is PSK31. Yeah. Phase shift keying. And then this one called JT.